right, everyone. Hello. You look fantastic. Are we ready? Cool. So, your platform is probably working, you just can't prove it. Or, it's probably failing, you just don't know it yet. However, you still need to prove it, whether it's working or failing. So today, we're going to try to answer one question. We are going to talk about, based on what were your objectives for your platform, what your definition of success actually is, how did you measure it, and how did you prove your point? So, welcome on stage, Robert, Katarina, Leon, Mauricio, and Thomas, who are gonna be our panelists. And well, big round of applause for them. Thank you. So, since we are talking about platform success, how to define it, how to measure it, and prove your point, well, there's another few people in the room, you, and we will give you the chance to be on this chair. I'm gonna be your voice, and you are gonna share your thoughts, your controversial opinions, your questions, so that you can also interact with the panelists. And the frame of this conversation is very simple. It's 2 points. First, we're going to keep in mind that platforms go through different stages, from MVP to building it the first time, bringing it to production, scaling it, having multiple teams offering different capabilities, to a point where you might want to get rid of it. And yes, there is a space for those of you who are dreamers who saw there was actually a need for the platform. And second, well, at these different stages, you need to prove different things. You need to prove there is a need. You need to prove, well, we need more money to scale it, or we are actually at the point where we failed and we need to maybe start again. So, compliance, budget. So again, 2 points for the frame of our conversation. Platforms go through different stages, and we need to prove different things. And how do we do it? Often with metrics. So, are you ready? Woo. Then, thank you. We go. Well, there's not many slides so that you don't get too attached to them. And here, you have a QR code, and you can ask your questions. And let's get started. So, going here to there, can you tell us a few words about yourself and your link with platform engineering?
Hello, my name is Robert. I been doing platforms since before there was platforms. Well, it's true. I was the chair of Tag App Delivery before that got disassembled. I helped found the Platforms Working Group. So my main thing for the last 5-something years has been platform engineering. I am also a CNCF ambassador and Microsoft MVP, and I work at Sopra Steria.
Hello everyone, I'm Katarina, or just Kati for short, and I honestly like or fell in love with platform engineering because I just enjoy developer experience so much. I was an app developer before, and always my users were like pretty far apart from me because they were like external to our company. And I honestly hated DevOps tasks. It was like repeated, annoying, everything failed and I didn't know what's going on. And then I discovered platform engineering and learned, hey, I can actually make this better. And the best thing about it is the people using this are in my company. I can have coffee with them, I can ask them, and so on. And yeah, that's what I enjoy about platform engineering. It's all about developer experience and like making their day-to-day life better for me.
Does this work? Oh yeah, great. Hi, I'm Leon. I am working as an internal developer relations specialist for internal developer platforms. Been doing that for like 3-4 years, I think. I remember the first time I worked with something that we also would call a platform right now. About 10 years ago, we built a platform on AWS Fargate. So that was not fun. And yeah, similar for me, I just really care about developer experience. I work mostly around the topic of platform adoption. So I'm very interested in like all the takes I'm gonna hear today. And yeah.
That's good. So Mauricio here. I am currently working for a company called Dash Zero. We do observability, but I got like into platforms. I guess that's same as Kati. It's like app developer background. I started working with Kubernetes in 2015, and then seeing the CNCF and the cloud native ecosystem explode made me really think developers will need a lot of help to get this actually working and to actually use this. So I worked in a bunch of different tools that were all about that. How do we help teams to get into Kubernetes and build platforms that actually do something and not just run our workloads, but actually do more than that. I wrote a book about platform engineering. I started writing it in 2021, published it in 2023, about that exactly, like how do you glue all these things together just to get something out of it, with the ultimate goal of improving developer experience, but also like the entire software delivery pipeline, which I think is super important. The more tools, the more difficult it is. So yeah, that's me.
Hello, my name is Thomas. I'm a cloud native trainer and architect. And yes, so I was one of the co-founders of the platform working group. And one of my goals is to make platform engineering at first approachable for developers. So I'm more or less a systems engineering dinosaur, and built many systems nobody could work with. And with platform engineering, we have the possibility to build systems which developers can use to get their services running. And on the other side, we can make maintenance a bit easier.
Amazing. So we have a lot of brilliant minds, and we already have a lot of questions. But to start with, since this is about experiences, can you tell us one initiative you were part of, and what was the definition of success? What were you trying to aim for, or how it evolved over time?
One initiative. I think I worked on close to 30 different platforms and platform teams. So just choosing one is kind of hard, but one that I stuck with the most, because I'm a consultant, so I get the chance to go around and creating a bunch of platforms, was at the Norwegian Railroad's Bane Nor, where we created an application platform. Before we started doing that, everything was very manual. And they had, at that time, I think 50 developer teams, something like that. And the time to get something out was just horrible. Every time they needed to do something, it took months. And that's not really great. So we created an application platform based on Kubernetes, just started building up, getting stuff out into production as fast as possible. And they are currently able to ship features in like a day if they have the time available, but also secure and stable, which is perfect. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the initiative that stuck most with me was the first one I was driving. I was pretty new in platform engineering, and I built an internal tool called Project Initializer, and as the name suggests, you could use it to template repositories. And then Backstage came up, and everybody was like, oh, this is super cool, this is hyped, everybody is using it, we're getting so much more out of it, we need this in our company. And then we were like, okay, let's use Backstage. We implemented it, and we thought, yeah, just because we think it's cool, everybody would think it's cool, right? So we sat there in our little office, threw it over the developers, and everybody hated it. We didn't have a definition of success, as you said. We didn't talk to people before because we were just like, hey, this is super cool. And I guess it's probably not the proudest initiative to share with all of you, but it's the one where I learned most from. And yeah, from there we went on. We actually started talking to people. We started to learn what they need. Later, when we had more users, we started to measure things. We got metrics to see if we evolved. And yeah, I guess that's the one I learned most from, at least.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be a successful initiative. No, okay, good. Then I have more stories. I think, yeah, the one that stuck most with me was I was working for like a governmental organization, and our platform was running on OpenShift, I want to say 4.7, 4.6, it was end of life, and we had to move to 4.7. And while we were doing it, we realized that everything was manually built before, and there was like not a single automation for like provisioning a cluster or anything. So we had this massive undertaking of documenting everything, finding like best practices, paved paths. Like we basically built the entire kind of principle of how this platform would look like in the future based on all the knowledge that we gathered so far. Sorry, that's my car, I need to leave. But yeah, it was just such a big project and really, really interesting. I don't know if it was super successful though, because a lot of people were just like, if you set up a cluster once, why do you need to automate it? Because you've done it once. So, you know, there's a lot of education that has to happen first.
Yeah, I guess that I will just jump on that as well. So I think that the thing that comes back to my mind always is that helping like traditional organizations, like large bank organizations, to do a balance between kind of like the tools that they are using today and the tools that they can include in their platforms that will make their life easier, right? It's all about connecting the dots. So for me, the initiative specifically with that very large bank in the US was showing them that even if they need to go through like a very long process of authorizing a new tool, the benefits of using these tools usually can outweigh all that cost that you need to pay up front. And then how do you justify that? How can you quickly prove and troubleshoot and understand like how much time are you going to save and how much like cognitive load are you also going to save by your employees? So for me, usually is helping people to connect the dots, and then when you connect the dots is how do you prove that that's going to work in the long run?
So my latest initiative was about a company in Austria, so a large career portal, which was transitioning from a typical monolithic infrastructure to a kind of a microservice infrastructure, and they decided to do everything on Kubernetes and started building the platform. But the main problem was that people in the company were not really familiar with Kubernetes and had to deal with so large Kubernetes manifests and so on to get those services running. Therefore, I designed and built a platform to bootstrap lots of services to get all of this stuff done, and also build a training program to get this to the developers.
Lovely, thank you. So we have plenty of questions, and I want to ask an introductory one to then jump to the top of the list. So we've heard that some didn't have any metrics at all, some didn't define success, and my question to you is, have you used any of these DORA, DevEx, Monk, Mock, any framework or any specific set of metrics? Did they matter? And do we really need these metrics? Was there one that really was useful for you in your journey to direct your decisions? So it's a very broad question to introduce the theme of metrics. Do they really matter? And for you, and in the experiences that you've shared, which one actually mattered? And it's open, now it's open for everyone.
So I think it's very well known. I'm very, very big DORA metrics fan. I think that if you don't measure, it's impossible to see if your platform is actually solving a problem or not. And I think that we always fail to remember that what we are trying to make more effective is our software delivery pipelines. We want to deliver more software. We want it to be more consistent. We want to have less errors. So for me, DORA is great. But we saw it in the presentation this morning as well, right? Like when you're evaluating AI, I can see how DORA and surveys can be mixed in order to get like the right data from different teams. I'm not a big survey fan, but I totally see why those two things combined are super important. I do feel that people sometimes with surveys, you just get data. I don't know how good the data is, but with DORA, you just get facts, right? Like you get data from your pipelines, you get data from your production environments. And if you are not doing DORA, I think that it's very hard to actually get the facts right when you are deploying software. So yeah, DORA metric fans here. I need a t-shirt now.
Yeah, you should have a t-shirt. We usually tend to not go for one framework or another. We first sit down and think like what are we trying to achieve with this platform, and what are the pain points that we're trying to solve. And what we usually tend to do is find specific metrics that works towards that. inspired or sometimes just like copy paste from stuff like Monk and DORA and et cetera, et cetera. So I don't personally, I don't think there's one approach that kind of like fits everything. So like being thoughtful about what you're trying to achieve and then measuring that. That's usually how, at least our teams tend to do that.
I have like a general love-hate relationship with metrics, because once you have metrics are easy to game. And I think the question that a lot of times I go to customers, the first question I ask, like, what do you want the platform to achieve for you? Because you can measure DORA, and I would maybe say, it's great if you can deliver fast, but if everyone hates the way that they have to do it, because, for example, everything's very opinionated, very bureaucratic, then that might also not be what developers would call a success. With that being said, though, I really like the HEART framework, which is something coming from UX. I think it measures happiness, engagement, adoption, retention, and task success. So it's really more focused on how much people would want to use the platform, which would be more relevant if the adoption is not driven by management, for example, where you're not getting like a mandate, I have to use the platform, but more like people, what's the natural pull for people to want to use the platform. So I'm a big fan of that.
Yeah, I'm very much with you. Like, I like to use those frameworks as a starting point to see, hey, what can we actually measure, which ideas can we have, and then continue from there. And as you just said, I think we need to be very careful about having the right metric at the right time. Like, if management forces adoption and we are measuring adoption, it tells us nothing because, hey, all developers are using our platform, amazing, but we forced them to do so because there's no other way. So that might not be very useful. And I think we all build platforms because our use cases are unique and so need to be the metrics we measure it with. And also, like, in the beginning, metrics are important to measure, but might not be the most useful to read because there are not many things going on the platform. So again, maybe not surveys, but like talking to people and find out. To get you started, create a baseline, and then from there continue, I think is a good approach.
So in fact, I think often DORA metrics and so on make sense. But for the concrete use case I talked before, there was only one metric at the beginning, and this was time to bootstrap a new service, and this was about 5 minutes to the development. And one of the metrics which is very hard to measure from my perspective is to get the developer happiness, right? So in fact, we would like our developers to use our platforms, and they should like to use our platforms, but that's really hard to measure.
It's very interesting what you're saying. You mentioned HEART, you mentioned Mock, and you mentioned again adoption versus, for instance, developer satisfaction. And all of these frameworks that we are mentioning, they have different objectives. They are built to do different things, and maybe they're built for just one team and not for the whole organization. And here is where the first question comes in. How can we effectively translate engineering-centric metrics into clear business value, and how that resonates with non-technical stakeholders? And here the assumption is really from engineering metrics to non-technical stakeholders. Do you have a take on that? Did that happen to you, or did you take a different approach?
So I think it's important to frame so what matters for the organization itself and what matters for engineering itself could be the same thing. It just might be conveyed in two different ways. So like finding that that balance and like getting the point across towards like management versus engineering, while you're still kind of bringing back forward the same. That is a skill that people should develop. Because even through my career, I heard a bunch of times like people say, well, this is, now you're just talking like technical things. But in my head, it was not technical. In my head, it also solves an organization problem or whatever. So learning how to convey the same message in two different ways, or three or more, depending on who you're talking to, that is something that if you're building platforms and developing platforms, you need to be able to.
This is a question for the consultants, I feel. To me, this is where a lot of stuff gets political, and I know a lot of people don't like that idea of being political people within their jobs, but that's just how it is often. There's an easy thing. You can just go by engineering hours and then multiply that by the average salary, and then you have like a number that might be attractive to save. But I think the question is, what's good for the organization, but also what does this particular person that you're talking to care about, right? So I said at the beginning, like if you ask the question, what should the platform do for the organization, technical stakeholders have their own interests as well. They might have political interests as well because they want to prove that the platform is great because that's good for their career. So you gotta be also, maybe playing the game a little bit of understanding what is this particular person invested in.
I think that that's one of the things that I really like about companies that basically will offer you this as a service, right? So how do you measure the speed of the organization and how you are releasing software, right? There are tons of companies that have these kind of products that basically will sell really, really well with the C-level executives, because they can actually show, well, you're spending this time. That basically means that you can calculate how much money are you spending on this, and by just looking at the numbers, you kind of know what do you need to do to get those numbers down. So I think that the story is there. So around space, around DORA metrics, you definitely have the story for the C-levels, but you actually need to measure something in order to be able to have that story. So technical people need to also be on board on measuring from day one if you actually want to get something out from it. And I think that I go back to the reasons for the platform, right? There can be hundreds of reasons why you build a platform, but you should be making something better. Like if you cannot say what that is, then it's very difficult to measure.
So some of the things we are often solving by creating platforms is we are solving a standardization issue, right? So if you are spending lots of time for all of the individualization of your software and so on to solve a proper infrastructure problem or whatever, then sometimes it gets really, really easy to sell this to the C-level management to say, if we have a common platform, if we have a common infrastructure below everything, especially when it's from multiple customers where you deployed, then often the C-level says, yes, it might be a good idea to do such things.
Yeah, I also think you should build platforms for a reason, and if you know what those reasons are, the problems you're solving in your organizations, it's not easy, but easier to map those metrics actually to those values, I think.
Can I just quickly add something that I just thought of while you were talking about standardization issue? An argument that I've actually used myself recently is, once we wrote down what the standards are, it is easily usable and consumable by AI. And once you drop those two letters, you don't even have to have another argument. You're just like, oh, then it's going to be faster. Great.
Lovely. So we have a question about backstage. You can go to Katarina's and Thomas' talk afterwards, and they will answer. No, I love it. So we've seen that it's not just about what you have to prove, but to whom you have to prove it, and then the metrics come up. You need the metrics to make your point, make your statement. So maybe, did your approach change based on the maturity of the platform? Did that happen that, okay, I'm just getting started, I have one objective, the objective is, to optimize this particular thing, but then once the platform is in production, or maybe when you figure out you need to decommission it, did you have some metrics that you really use to say, okay, to drive decisions?
I think metrics. Well, I think it is very healthy to start out with a goal and not, again, if you're doing platform engineering, you never have to approach it like a project. It's product development, so it's a continuous thing. But having those clear, goals for what you're trying to do at the start, that will change as soon as you have achieved those goals. So a platform should be continuously evolving, and that would also change what you're trying to measure and what kind of metrics you're looking for. And that might be stuff like at the start you might be looking at specifically like onboarding and things like that, things that get stuff moving quickly. And then maybe later on it would be time to production or something that kind of shows that the platform continues to deliver. I don't have any specific metrics to mention, but I think it's wise to take a look at where you're at certain points and kind of plan ahead based on that.
I think as soon as the platform is in place, and maybe a bit earlier, sometimes GTX frameworks or DevEx metrics are pretty cool, just to find out how the developers feel with it. And on the other side, yes, as we said with DORA and so on, we find out if it makes us faster, if it makes us slower at the moment, and yes.
I think it's kind of funny to see how now like AI is pushing our platforms to be much better, right? Because we wanted to, like presentation this morning again, it's like you get a lot of code creation, you can just create a lot of code, but you cannot ship it out. So then like you can quickly demonstrate the value of adding these new tools into the pipeline and where these tools are actually making a difference and where they are not. So for me, I think that like the more mature the platform it gets, the more you start focusing on standardization. I think standardization and shared practices, and that can multiply, like the value of the platform, like across different teams. But how do you measure that is always complicated, right? Because I think that standardization is something that maybe doesn't give you something quick, so it's hard to see and how to justify. But the more senior platform engineers that I've been exchanging ideas with, they all share that idea of the sooner that you start with the standardization, the more that you can actually see the impact of that standardization, and you will see it in this case, like for AI adoption pretty fast. Because you can enable multiple teams at the same time if they are all using the same tools. If they are all using different tools, it's quite hard to build like a custom solution for each of these.
Yeah, I agree that standardization is super important and it's great to measure, but what I think is also important to measure is like, what if one service, one team is like not on our golden path? Like, how good can we support them? Because like, if we support the golden path really well, it's amazing already. But if the rest of the company is getting slower and slower because of their edge cases that they just can't get around for whatever reasons, I think we also need to be there for them. So I think if the platform is mature already, it's important to not only measure the golden path. Of course, it's the most important one, the one used by most people. But still, we kind of need to find a way to stay flexible and to not force people onto one path, because it will be bad for platform adoption again. And yes, you said, I think in the beginning, it will be hard to rely, or at least I believe it's hard to rely on metrics that much, because you just don't have that many users on your platform. Of course, metrics like, hey, how long does this deployment take? How long until this dev environment is up? Are super useful, but also like, hey, are people actually liking this? Is this improving their day-to-day life? Will just come over time, I believe.
I think also what we're achieving with the metrics changes when the platform becomes more mature. So in the beginning, we care about proving the value of the platform much more than towards, when you already onboarded most of the teams, and then it's more about reliability. And as you say, like, how does it actually improve based on real data that you've collected maybe over years, rather than, well, we've collected some data and we think this is probably going to happen, right?
Thank you. There's a very interesting question about how do you prove success, or how do you tie success or failure to the platform itself, which I think it's interesting. I mean, I read the question, maybe I get it wrong. How do you prove success or failure can be attributed to the platform? And I think, I would see it more as when the platform fails. Do you have any experience where you had to say, well, this platform is not going in the right direction, we need something different? And maybe how did you answer the question, is it still worth it to have this platform? And link it maybe to some other teams.
I think one of the things is that if people are willing to use your platform without you having to force it, and they're talking about the platform to other people, about how much it helped them, that's a great, like already an indicator for success. Again, like the usability of the platform without actually having to, improve actual things, because it's just like people feel like this is making my life easier. That feeling is quite important already.
It's a platform like marketing. If the users of the platform starts being the advocates for the platform, I think you are doing something right at least. When it comes to on the other side where things are failing, it's when people don't actually take into account what people feel about these things, or are stuck in certain ways because that's the typical, like that's how we always done it, or the worst scenario that I've been to as a customer that kept on like pushing back on everything because they are unique, stuff like that. And it is a continuous process. You have to actually get something out there. You have to rebuild and restructure, right, like everything until you get to the point where it starts getting adopted without you having to force people to do that. And I think that is one of the main things that people are missing, because they think of platform engineering as a technical field. It's not really that technical. Technical implementation is pretty easy, but it's everything around it that is the hard part of platform engineering.
And we kind of know that, right? Like, so there is like product marketing and product feedback loops that we should implement in our platforms, like be more conscious about it. Like when you plan for building a platform, you should plan to build those loops as well. So you can actually evaluate your platform as a product, like per se, like it's exactly like that. Like you check who is using it, they are happy or not, and you pivot if you need to, if like things are not going in the right direction. But again, that's not built into our engineering culture, and most platform engineering teams are coming from a heavy engineering background, so we just need to learn a little bit more about that.
So one of the main things for me to define success is how fast and how well people come to the services or applications when they want to bootstrap them. So as an example, if people are using the platform, are following more or less a golden path, and need some minor adoption to get this working, and need to create a service ticket to get this working, then something might go wrong, right? Yes.
All good. So the lunch is now, but we have another 15 minutes, so we need to convince you to stay here. So I have one last question, and then we will maybe spend another 5 minutes on your questions. So you feel free to go and feel free to stay. And the QR code disappears, so at the end, I'll leave you my chair, and you can come here and ask one question if you're fast enough. Okay, how do you approach the question from management, from whomever is your stakeholder? Is it worth it? Is it worth it? How do you go into that meeting and answer the question, okay, we are building this thing, or we have been building it for a year, it's not yet in production, but it is still worth it, or it has been in production for. How do you approach the question, is it worth it to build this thing?
Quick one, it's going to save you money so you can buy more tokens. That's the only way that will work today. So if you don't go with that, good luck.
I think that this is also a question about modern software engineering. That's like asking, is it worth it to build stuff in microservices? Like most of the time, probably yes, but then there is an edge case where the culture of the organization or the individual people are not ready to move to like a new paradigm and all that. That's true. But then the question is, are you okay to be developing software like at 0.25 times the speed of everyone else? So that's like a business question, really. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree, and I think now that AI is coming up, building proper platforms is getting more and more important, because we are developing so much more code, so we also need to get it out faster. And at the same time, we can use the platforms to kind of create deterministic guardrails around AI to kind of guide it a bit. which adds a whole new point to this discussion, in my opinion.
Yes, it's worth it. I think if you don't approach modern IT with a platform perspective, then you will do worse. It's simply having to deal with all the variables of the modern IT when it comes to both cloud infrastructure and how you develop software and how you publish it and how you get into production, how you do security, how you do observability. You can't really do that without the platform approach. You could if you have a small team and they all know everything, and most people don't. I think it's worth it no matter how you look at it, but of course, if you're talking to executives and people that don't truly understand the meaning of doing platform engineering, that is when people like me come in and kind of have to convince them, which happens way too often, unfortunately. But if the management knows what's best for them, yeah, it's worth continuing working on those platforms.
Amazing. So any of you who has a burning question here, would you like to join? Anyone?
It's not.
It's
scary.
High responsibility, high risk. It's okay, cool.
Let me just ruminate a little bit, because you were asking earlier about success and failure, and I would just want to tease my talk that's later at 4 p.m., by the way, in this very room. But one of my favorite failure patterns is when you build this beautiful, beautiful platform. You thought about all the architectural, beautiful design, everything. No one's using it. Absolutely, no one's using it because you never talk to your developers to ask what do you actually need. So that's the main thing that I've seen so many times, and I still see it. I come to a new client, I ask them how do your developers actually deploy to production? And they don't know. And I'm like, what are we doing here actually? Right? Yeah.
Amazing. So we've seen how, with the burning question.
Yeah. You're gonna get a mic, I think.
Sorry, it is not. Thank you so much. So somewhere in the room, it starts even earlier. The exec leadership needs to do something to prepare the organization, because the managers might not have been in the room before that to even know to talk to the developers, or there's missing communication passes. So do you have any recommendation on that eventually? I will come to the talk though.
I mean, talk to your developers. I don't know. That's my recommendation. I feel also, especially, I think platform teams are most successful when they come out of developer teams, right? They're cross-cutting. They're not just systems administrators, infrastructure people, but they do either include developers in the platform teams themselves. There's models where there's an infrastructure layer, and then there's maybe a more what do you call it, development layer, and you regularly talk to developers, get their feedback, but also you include them when you build things, right, as beta testers or whatever. But I don't want to spoil my talk too much, so I can't answer that question too much.
Yeah, and not to spoil my talk, but talk to your developers. My talk is going to be not deep diving into everything, but it's going to probably mention just about everything about platform engineering. But I recently was at a client that we started doing user interviews with developers, and they couldn't understand why we were doing it. And it turns out before we got there, they made a council of people that represented the developers. They got their opinions about stuff, and then they made decisions on how the platform is supposed to be looking like. And then we started talking to actual developers and realized they didn't want anything that they set out to do. So talk to developers. Don't talk to the people that are, just the team leads or tech leads or whatever. You talk to the actual people writing code, because they are the people that is using your platform, not whoever is their boss.
Thank you. Okay.
Just one more thing. I've also noticed, and now we're getting a bit in the open ranty area, I think, because I come in as like a developer relations person, so not an actual developer. And the times when people have said, "Oh, you are the voice of the developer, so we're inviting you to our meetings when we discuss things," and I'm like, "No, I'm not. I cannot speak for developers because I am not a developer here. I don't know." I know I have some idea, but really what I'm doing is I'm trying to make it easier for you to talk to the actual developers, right? Like, so don't, like the amount of also SREs and platform engineers who kind of like, sometimes it's difficult, sometimes it clashes with like the needs of developers and your needs, but this is exactly where you need to build a good relationship with the people who are most difficult, who always question you, who always questions your plans. Those are the people that you actually should talk to the most.
Okay, one final question. We have 3 minutes, so I'll give you keep time in mind, but I want to first just sum it up. So we've seen how these people are not so attached to metrics. They use metrics to prove a point. And I guess we need to prove a point. We use metrics to do that, and we are proving a point to someone. And more often than not, that's also very important. One final question.
It's actually also the questions that came in on the poll. Some were asking, do we need to rethink platform engineering and IDPs, as in the beginning, the platform was making the life of the human developer easier? Now 90% of the code is created by AIs. Do we need to build the platform for the AI?
That's a very good question. I think that but that's the thing. It's like, that's why developer satisfaction is super important when you're dealing with humans. When you're dealing with agents, that doesn't really matter. What really matters is how much software do you ship, and how that is relevant for the organization, and how much return of investment are you getting back from that. So for me, like, at least my personal perspective is that we should make our pipelines solid so we can ship more software. And then on top of that, then we evaluate the personas that are part of the organization, including agents now, and then see how can we optimize different paths for these different personas, I guess. So I don't think that we need to restart a new platform initiative. We just need to make our platform better to cater for more personas, depending kind of like what are you trying to achieve.
I think you don't necessarily have to make sure that your platform supports AI. In itself, platform engineering is just creating standards and making sure that the interface towards the platform, like that it makes sense, and that should make sense to a human developer as much as AI, like if it's done right. So I think unless you have done something very bad with your platform, which means people won't be able to use it either, I think AI should just be able to fit right in most of the time, maybe.
For the sake of time.
Oh no, let me just quickly say this one thing, because we talked about this yesterday at the speaker dinner, actually, very briefly, where I'm thinking, like, we've been talking about standards and getting everyone to take this one path, like converge on this one thing, but I think personalization is much more relevant now. Like, everyone has their own personal AI agent. So yes, we should still, like, the platform itself should still offer like standardized like entry points, APIs, but the experience of the developer will be much more focused on like the personalization of the platform.
Thank you. Then my invite to you is go to their talks, and thank you.